So hi guys, UPSC floated the UPSC CSE Prelims examination form on 22nd of Jan and इन 7 दिनों में हुआ ये है कि आपने कम से कम 70 वीडियोस देख लिए हैं। फॉर्म में क्या चेंजेस हुए हैं, कैसे आपको फॉर्म भरना है और क्या क्या आपको करना है। एंड इट हैज रिजल्टेड इनटू 3 थिंग्स: एंग्जाइटी and even more anxiety. As soon as the form was rolled out, guys, a rat race started and there was a bombardment of unresearched, half-baked YouTube videos claiming to have command over the new form which no one had seen earlier, the changes that no one had seen earlier, and that added to a lot of panic and anxiety. But guys, as a team here, we at UPSC MITra, we did not want to come out with any half-baked advice, so we waited. We did our internal research. We thought that it is worth waiting some time rather than giving out false or misleading information. So in the very beginning, we'll understand why in the first place UPSC is asking us interests, our leadership positions, our hobbies, laurels, etc. at the very first step of the examination. What does UPSC want to achieve with this? Number one. Number two, what would be the best possible way to fill your UPSC CSE Prelims form that would maximize your chances of good performance at the interview stage? ठीक है, अभी हम प्रीलिम्स फॉर्म भर रहे हैं, लेकिन ये हम तय कर रहे हैं कि इंटरव्यू परफॉर्मेंस कैसे मैक्सिमाइज होगा. आई हैव विद मी देवनी मैम. यू ऑल नो हर. She is a full-time psychologist associated with UPSC MITra. We have Ajit sir. He has background in law, political science and international relations, IT sector, and of course, teaching and mentoring. We also have Nitya madam. Nitya madam is also associated with UPSC MITra family. She is also a former IS aspirant. She runs her own non-profit organization and she is in the process of building her own think tank. So guys, we 4 people as a team. In the very beginning, we'll try to understand very briefly the historical background as to why the commonly known section 7, which contains information about achievements, prizes, medals, interest, hobbies, why this section exists in the first place, and will address both categories of students. The first category of students is those who have surplus laurels. बहुत से उनके पास medals, prizes, हॉबीज, इंटरेस्ट है और वो परेशान है कि फॉर्म में फिल क्या करना है. अल्टीमेटली यू हैव अ 250 वर्ड लिमिट. ऑल्सो you don't want to give out information which would turn out to be counterproductive at the interview stage. But at the same time, we have another category of students who have minimal or non-existing laurels, non-existing hobbies, interests and so on. क्योंकि जिंदगी ने उनको कभी मौका ही नहीं दिया इंटरेस्ट इनकलकेट करने का, हॉबीज को परस्यू करने का. Here our motive is to inculcate confidence in both categories of students. ठीक है, जिनके पास सरप्लस है और जिनके पास डेफिसिट है हॉबीज का, इंटरेस्ट का, अचीवमेंट्स का, to be able to confidently fill this form for the best possible outcome. And at the end, Ajay sir will be speaking on best, quote unquote best or quote unquote ideal service preference. बिकॉज आइडियल तो हो नहीं सकता, सर्विस प्रेफरेंस हमेशा आपके अनुसार बदलेगा, लेकिन जनरली जो सीनियर कैंडिडेट्स चूज करते हैं जो कि टिपिकल होता है वो आपके सामने शेयर किया जाएगा. इट्स अप टू यू हाउ यू वांट टू यूज इट एज पर योर ओन ट्विक्स एंड टर्न्स. देयर आर 3 रिपोर्ट्स on your screen. Number 1, we have Kothari committee. Number 2, Alag committee, and third in fact is UPSC's Prelims 2025 notification. The Kothari committee in 1976 back then had stated the motive, the utility of personality test. And here the highlighted section is our point of interest: variety and depth of interest, ability for social cohesion and leadership, intellectual and moral integrity gets tested in the personality test. Now guys, this is very different with what the interview used to be called earlier. UPSC civil services interview till the 1950s, mid 1950s, used to be called as the viva voce. Now viva voce was nothing but the oral version of answering. जो आप आंसर्स लिखते थे पेपर के ऊपर, वही आप ओरली आंसर कर रहे हो. Then it evolved to be a personality test. So from viva voce to a proper personality test. आगे jumping to 2001, the Alag committee report. यहाँ पर अलग कमिटी क्या बोलती है, जो हमने यहाँ पर हाईलाइट भी कर रखा है, इट defines the concept of personality. Alak committee goes on to state that it is an evolving system. Personality is an evolving system which has a structure that is partly stable and a process that is partly fluid. This is a very important consideration that will be discussing in the later part of this video, especially for those students who have deficit of hobbies, interests, and other achievements. ठीक है. And as you can see, this snippet from the UPSC 2025 notification, it verbatim copies what Kothari committee has observed. आप अगर यहाँ पर देखोगे, variety and depth of interest, ability of social cohesion and leadership, intellectual and moral integrity. So this is apart from your intellectual abilities is being assessed, and this is precisely where the role of hobbies, interests, and other co-curricular activities come in. Speaking more on the Alag committee, or conversely, as it was called, the committee to review the CSE examination process. Devani ma'am, I would like to ask from you, when this committee, Alag committee, defines personality as the personality of a person greatly influences his or her efficiency. So they are using this superlative, greatly influences his or her efficiency on the job that person undertakes. And it is an evolving system which has a structure that is partly stable and a process that is partly fluid. So I would like to know from you, because you are a full-time psychologist and best placed to shed light on this, what does this committee imply when it states that personality is an evolving system which has a structure that is partly stable and a process that is partly fluid?
So what this basically means is that your personality is it's partly stable and partly fluid. So there are certain aspects of your personality that you can term that these are stable. They are kind of not very much subject to change. For example, something like traits. So something, let us say, introversion, extroversion, or being open to change, or emotional stability. These are things that are relatively fixed, relatively stable. And the temperament that you have, the kind of so whether you are somebody who's inhibited, whether you're somebody who's outgoing, these things are more stable. And of course, the underlying layer is that of genetic predisposition. So all of these traits and temperaments, they are a result of your genetic predisposition. They're a result of your biological makeup. So these are the more stable aspects of your personality. And then you have something which is more fluid. So your environmental influences, the kind of culture that you have grown up in, the kind of learnings that you've had, and of course, neuroplasticity also plays a role here, because we do know that your brain constantly responds to your environment. So there are changes that can happen in your brain even in adulthood, right? So it's kind of about nature versus nurture. So somebody who is an introverted person, yes, that could be a trait of that person, but because that person has learned over the years that at my workplace, I need to speak out, I need to be a team leader. So maybe that person is a little less introverted when they are at their workplace. So that is the influence of the environment that is happening. So for somebody, if you suppose, if you are a civil servant, then you may be an introverted person, but you also are aware that as a bureaucrat, you might have to connect with people, you will have to lead people, you will have to be in leadership position. So that environmental influence itself will kind of add some level of fluidity, some level of changes that will happen in your personality.
Yeah, so this should also bust many myths. बच्चे सामने से आकर बोल रहे हैं. एक बच्चा तो बोल रहा था कि सर मेरे तो अचीवमेंट यही है कि स्कूल में मेरी बहुत ज्यादा पिटाई हुई है. ठीक है, हमारे तो कोई इंटरेस्ट ही नहीं है, हमारे तो कोई हॉबीज ही नहीं है. सो दैट्स द पार्ट ऑफ योर नर्चर कंपोनेंट. यू कैन ऑलवेज नर्चर इंटरेस्ट, nurture new hobbies. So that's the very first step. Then Devani ma'am, the
Yes,
other
absolutely.
point that Alag committee states that the personality of a person greatly influences his or her efficiency on the job that person undertakes. Now, please shed light on this aspect.
Right. So, whatever your personality is, whatever the traits are, or whatever the culture has shaped you to be, it all of it is going to influence the job that you're going to carry out. So, for example, there is an ocean model. Ocean means O is for openness, C is for conscientiousness, E is for extroversion, A is for agreeableness, and N is for neuroticism. So how open you are to new experiences, that is going to influence your efficiency on job, right? So if you are an IFS officer, but you are somebody who does not like change a lot, and you are somebody who's not open to experiencing new cultures, then the job might get challenging for you. So the same goes for traits like conscientiousness, which is basically, discipline, resilience, all of those things, persistence, and extroversion, introversion. We all are aware of it. Agreeableness, how agreeable you are. So all of that is there, and your self-efficacy also influences the kind of job that you will be able to do. If you're somebody who has a good level of confidence, if you believe that you can get things done, then you will inevitably be more likely to get things done. On the other hand, somebody who has a low self-efficacy, their efficiency is going to be low, because somewhere at the back of their minds they believe that I'm not capable of doing this. And of course, emotional intelligence is something that most aspirants, I think, would be familiar with. It's a part of your ethics paper as well. It's a part of the syllabus, right? So, to what extent you're able to manage your emotions, to what extent you are able to understand the emotions of the people that you are dealing with. So, all of that is going to influence whether you are going to be efficient at your job or not. Same goes for locus of control. So, locus of control is something where to what extent do you believe that you can make things happen? If you're somebody who has an internal locus of control and you believe that, yes, if I work hard, I can make things happen, that is only when you will feel motivated. If you're somebody who believes more in luck and destiny and those things, and you're somebody who believes that things are not really in your control, then your efficiency at your work will go down. And last, of course, is the person organization fit. So what kind of a job you are suited for, what kind of an organization you are suited for, right? So if you are somebody who is more creative and who likes to be a little more unstructured with their work environments, but you're placed in an environment where there's a lot of hierarchy and rigidity, then obviously you will not be able to be as efficient.
We have briefly shed light and tried to understand what exactly different committees in general and Alag committee, the committee to review the functioning of the civil services examination process, meant by personality. Guys, jumping directly to the section 7, which asks for our achievements, prizes, medals, scholarships, sports, NCC participation, extracurricular activities, and so on. What exactly is UPSC trying to know from the students, or what exactly is UPSC trying to extract from the students through this particular section in the form?
Also, with this section, I think UPSC is trying to understand what your comfort zone is and where you have to kind of go outside of your comfort zone. And of course, it is also trying to gauge what your coping mechanisms are. So if you are in a high stress job, of course, your hobby is going to give you some amount of, a bit of a balance in your life. It will help you manage your stress. It is something that can help you cope with difficult decision making. So, for example, if you are somebody who is into creative hobbies, then it might be easier for you to come up with creative solutions or to come up with a little bit of innovation in your decision making. It might be possible for you to step back from a difficult decision, to step back from that situation and get a little bit creative with it. So, for example, as far as I remember, Winston Churchill, for example, now he had a hobby of painting, right? And in World War II, when he was very stressed out, he used painting to manage his stress. He used painting as an outlet, and he was also he kind of mentioned somewhere that the creativity that he took in terms of his strategic decisions was also influenced by his creative nature and the creative hobby that he had inculcated in himself. Then similarly, work-life balance. So when you already have a hobby, then it will be easier for you to kind of, a lot of discussion is anyways happening about work-life balance, I think, these days. So you will be able to maintain that work-life balance, and that becomes particularly important in a high-stress job because it's so easy for your boundaries to get blurred.
This
And for
becomes
anybody who
this becomes even more relevant when there are talks about working 70 hours, 80 hours, 100 hours a week.
right. Right. So, I mean, in a situation like that, of course, if somebody is not able to maintain that balance, they will at some point burn out. And that is not good for the person or for the organization that is employing them. So, that is the relevance of hobbies. And of course, resilience building is also there because hobbies themselves kind of bring a lot of positive emotions in your life. They bring a lot of positivity in your life, and that in itself can help you build resilience, can help you build some resources that will help you cope with difficult situations.
Apart from coping mechanism, what else or in what another way do hobbies, interests, or other extra or co-curricular activities help us as a person?
So the next one is also about integrity. So integrity, I think, is defined as the congruence between your thoughts or your opinions and your actions, right? So the hobby, when you are kind of engaging very seriously in a hobby, then that shows that this is the kind of person that I am. It is an expression of who you are. Your authentic self is expressed through the hobby. So that is again something that UPSC is trying to gauge, that what sort of a person you are. You are trying to tell the commission that this is who I am, this is what my values are, and that is why your hobby is aligned with those values. And also, commitment and discipline is something that is a very big part of integrity. Integrity itself, of course, is a broader term, but it encompasses a lot of different traits. So commitment, discipline, these are some traits that are part of it. And a lot of hobbies require commitment, they require discipline. Like if you're very seriously pursuing some kind of a hobby, or you have devoted 4 or 5 years to a hobby, then that shows that you're disciplined, that you're committed towards it, and that will reflect in the kind of person that you are and whether you have integrity or not. And of course, consistency across roles, because certain hobbies will allow you to be a little more consistent if you clear this examination. So if you have become a civil servant, then your hobbies, if they're aligned with those kind of roles, then that consistency is there. So whatever you have been doing all your life, whatever your skills are that have been developed due to the hobby, those are going to be applicable in your new role as a civil servant. And of course, the integrity mechanism is also, I mean, the entire mechanism is about integrity, right? So you have all of these methods by which this mechanism is being reinforced, and that is what UPSC, I think, is trying to gauge.
Fine. So when Devani ma'am talks about your hobbies, your interests, your co-curricular activities, and this particular section in the UPSC form is also an integrity testing mechanism. What does that mean? So let's take two contrasting examples. One, uh, one example of a student, of a person who has surplus hobbies, interests, laurels, prizes, and so on. And what would that person's DAF look like, or how would that person's DAF be more coherent? Guys, remember, we are trying to keep our DAF coherent, and coherence is something that will establish integrity before the interview board. Then we'll jump to the other side of the coin, as to a student who has deficit of laurels, interests, hobbies, and so on. So let's come to Nitya. Now, again, guys, as we have spoken, Nitya is a former IS aspirant, and presently she is running her own non-profit organization and building her own think tank and involved in various other projects. But if she was into giving this particular examination, CSE 2025, then how would her DAF look like, or how would her section on achievements, interests, and uh, hobbies look like? सबसे पहले, guys, this is her employment details. यहाँ पर हम surplus वाला देख रहे हैं, guys. A person, an employee who has surplus, laurels, experience, work ex, and so on. ठीक है? अब यहाँ पर सबसे पहले वर्क एक्स देखेंगे, उसके बाद हॉबीज देखेंगे. थर्डली गाइज विल कम टू अ सेक्शन जहां पर हमने कुछ चीजें अवॉइड की हैं. आपको जो स्क्रीन पर दिख रहा है, नाउ दिस इज नॉट द बेस्ट थिंग, नॉट द बेस्ट डैफ दैट यू कुड सी, बट डेफिनेटली अबव एवरेज तो है. सो हमने कौन सी चीजें यहां पर ऐड की है, इसके अलावा दूसरी चीजें जो हमने यहां पर ऐड नहीं की हैं और डेलिबरेटली अवॉइड की हैं, will want to know from you, like what could be the reason that we have avoided the other information while we have used this information. So what is all this, and what was the experience that you had gauged from this that would guide you in filling this form? Yes, Nitya.
So I can just tell you in one line each what I was doing at all of these jobs and why we chose to put this in the DAF. So my experience at UNDP, I was working with a Green Climate Fund project, here in India itself.
Mhm.
My internship with the city government of Bloomington was during the COVID time. So I was working with a lot of grant application work that the government would send out to the federal government to get funds. Um, then my fellowship with the Global Governance Initiative, again, I co-authored and published a white paper on climate change in India. For my internship with NILOD Niti Aayog, I was working on a World Bank project which was assessing the performance of engineering schools across India. Then my Consulate General of India experience, I initiated an analytical system for their consular and passport department so that they could track the nature of queries.
So you were already working with many senior IFS officers out there.
During my time at the consulate, all the department heads themselves were IFS officers.
Fine.
The last one now, I started my own nonprofit back in 2022. We're working in education, healthcare, and animal welfare. Now that I'm not preparing anymore, I have just gone back to working on my nonprofit.
Fine. So similarly, this was about your work ex. Here we have extracurricular activities in prizes, medals, scholarship. What is point one DLF A1 Scholar 2014 French language per
Yeah.
semester scholarship from Indiana University Bloomington as an international student? What is this?
So as a third language, while I was in school, I took up French, and I was really enjoying learning the language. So I went ahead and got a certification from the Embassy of France here in New Delhi.
Mhm.
So that's one of my certifications that I have in a foreign language. And then for my undergraduate program, I was actually studying in the US. So I was um, given a per semester scholarship by my university as an international student to
Okay,
cut down my load.
fine. Under sports and NCC, you had represented, you had played badminton at state level and you were second in the state in
Mhm.
under 17 category, and you
Yeah.
had played rugby at national level. Can you elaborate on this?
Sure. Again, while I was in school, I was very active in sports. So I was in these two sports, I was able to do well.
Mhm.
So badminton, we went for several championships. So in one of the years, uh, I stood second. And then same for rugby, I was able to play for the Delhi state team. We did not win anything, but it's still a significant achievement to be able to play with other people representing states.
Got it. Fine. So next, under positions, प्रकुल एक बार इस पर बात कर लें, उसके बाद आपके पास आते हैं. क्या बोल रहे हो प्रकुल? शॉर्ट में बोल दो.
Yeah, I was saying, ma'am, all that you mentioned about these sports, I was also in the sports while I was in school. But do you have these certificates also
विल कम टू
of
इट, विल कम
these?
टू इट
Yeah,
प्रकुल.
okay.
क्यू एन ए में इन सब पर बात होगी. ठीक है, कोई कहीं नहीं जा रहा. नित्या है यहीं पर है, अजित सर है, देवयानी मैम है. ठीक है. Till all your doubts are addressed, we all are here. In the next section, Nitya, here
Yes.
under positions of distinction leadership held in school and college, you have mentioned community development volunteer with bucket list New Delhi and campus engagement lead TEDx Indiana University. Elaborate on this, please.
Yeah, again, so as I mean, I am an ex-aspirant now, but I've always been very keen on working in the public sector and for the people. So as soon as I had finished school, I had a couple of months ka break tha before college had to start. So I was volunteering at this non-profit called Bucket List, where I was working with underprivileged kids. So that was a very great experience, and I was helping with community development in that. And then while I was in college, our university had a TEDx chapter. So I
Mhm.
was handling the marketing initiatives for the people on campus for that.
Fine. And in the end, other extracurricular activities and interests, such as hobbies, you have mentioned writing, journaling, poetry, research, short stories. Although it appears self-explanatory, anything you could add or elaborate?
No, again, this and we will expand on this further when sir talks about leaving certain things out while filling the DAF. This I just wrote because I was thinking about the future, that in the interview, if the panel were to ask me questions, these are things that I can very confidently talk about at length also.
Fine, fine. So guys, so far you have seen हॉबीज एक्स्ट्रा करिकुलर एक्टिविटीज वर्क एक्सपीरियंस सेक्शन, ठीक है, अगेन अबव एवरेज है यहां पर कुछ चीजें हमने अवॉइड की हैं, ठीक है। रिमेंबर गाइस, कोहेरेंट डाफ भरने की हम बात कर रहे हैं, हैविंग अ कोहेरेंट सेक्शन 7। सो while we speak of having coherence, we have consciously avoided other work experience and extra curricular activities, ठीक है। लाइक बासिला अमरकांत, मैं आप लोगों को यहाँ पर देख पा रहा हूँ स्क्रीन पर, अनम्यूट कर दिया आपको। जैसे पोजीशन ऑफ डिस्टिंक्शन लीडरशिप हेल्ड इन स्कूल और कॉलेज में, वी हैव अवॉइडेड मेंशनिंग कम्युनिटी डेवलपमेंट वॉलंटियर विद बकेट लिस्ट। हैव यू मेंशन्ड दिस?
We have actually.
Okay, we shouldn't have mentioned that, ठीक है। So we shouldn't have mentioned the first point. क्यों हमने मेंशन नहीं करना चाहिए था, मैं आपसे पूछूंगा। सेकंड, peer tutor for a business analytic course at Indiana University, Bloomington, USA for semester, assisting 42 students and so on. Other extra curricular activities and interest में कथक, she has a diploma in कथक, हमने अवॉइड किया है। वोकल, she has a diploma in Indian classical singing, वो हमने अवॉइड किया है। She has been playing तबला since 2008, ये भी हमने अवॉइड किया है। वर्क एक्सपीरियंस में हमने क्या अवॉइड किया है? शी वॉज विद इनर गॉडेस रिमोट, वो हमने अवॉइड किया है। करिकुलम डेवलपर फ्रॉम 2020 June to August, where she had drafted the vision and intentions document for financial literacy for girls between the ages of 8 to 14 years. So guys, this could have added weight to her DAF, but we have consciously avoided this. What could be the reason? बासिला अमरकांत, नाउ दिस इज द मोस्ट इंपॉर्टेंट क्वेश्चन दैट वी आर आस्किंग गाइस। इससे पहले जो हमने डिस्कस किया, बीट वर्क एक्स, बीट को एक्स्ट्रा करिकुलर एक्टिविटीज, ठीक है, दिस वाज द कॉन्टेक्स्ट। लेकिन अब जो हम आपसे सवाल पूछ रहे हैं कि हमने वो चीजें वहां पर मेंशन की हैं, दोज एक्सपीरियंसेस, दोज हॉबीज, दोज वर्क एक्सपीरियंसेस, बट वी हैव अवॉइडेड दिस। व्हाट कुड बी द रीजन, बासिला?
And just to add, sorry, I'm interrupting. This question is being asked in the context, keeping in mind that IFS was my first preference. So try to think from that angle.
Yes, Basila.
So firstly, I think that बहुत ज़्यादा keywords हो जाएंगे उसमें.
ठीक है,
A lot of information will be there.
ठीक है।
And also the things that you've mentioned, it is more in sync with her first priority. First preference, IFS. तो वो ज़्यादा उस पे pressure put करेगा कि that she has also done a lot of work in that sector.
अच्छा, फर्स्ट प्रायोरिटी को जस्टिफाई किया जा रहा है विद व्हाटएवर वी हैव फिल्ड इन द डैफ, इन द फॉर्म।
यस,
वेरी गुड। और आपने कहा कि यहाँ पर कीवर्ड ज्यादा हो जाते हैं, ठीक है। अमर, कुछ ऐड करोगे यहाँ पे?
नो सर, सेम
सेम। सो गाइस, नाइसली पुट बाय बासिला, कीवर्ड ज्यादा हो जाते हैं गाइस। नाउ अगेन, व्हेन हर फर्स्ट प्रेफरेंस वाज IFS, यहाँ पर वी हैव सीन, वी हैव मेंशन्ड दैट शी हैज वर्कड विद UNDP, इंडियन कॉन्सुलेट जनरल and other things, World Bank associated projects and so on, ठीक है। The same thing applies to hobbies and interests. But if you would have added this Kathak, diploma in Kathak, diploma in vocal, tabla playing as a hobby, then guys here कहीं ना कहीं हम लोग इनकोहेरेंस लेकर आ रहे हैं, प्लस वी आर एडिंग unnecessary headache. Like you are giving the board members a chance to ask you questions on your background with tabla, your background with Indian classical singing, because you have a diploma in it, and Kathak, you have a diploma in it. Similarly, a community development volunteer with bucket list, we should have avoided this. Why we should have avoided this? Amarkant, Shakib?
IFS मैम का फर्स्ट प्रेफरेंस था, बट कम्युनिटी डेवलपमेंट वॉलंटियर विद बकेट लिस्ट थोड़ा उससे रिलेटेड नहीं हो पा रहा था, इस वजह से।
किससे ज्यादा रिलेवेंट दिख रहा है आपको? पॉइंट 1
ये सर आईएएस से ज्यादा रिलेटेड दिख रहा है।
आईएएस से ज्यादा लग रहा है। डू यू एग्री शकीब?
यस सर, क्योंकि कम्युनिटी डेवलपमेंट तो आईएएस में ही होगा, लोकल कम्युनिटी डेवलपमेंट प्रोजेक्ट्स करते हैं, सो समथिंग रिलेटेड टू आईएएस।
अच्छा ठीक है, मेक सेंस मेक सेंस। आईएफएस से उतना रेजोनेट नहीं हो रहा है, आईएएस के साथ ज्यादा रेजोनेट हो रहा है। फाइन फाइन। सेकंड पॉइंट गाइस, नाउ दिस एक्टिविटी वाज आल्सो डन आउटसाइड इंडिया, ब्लूमिंगटन यूएसए, लेकिन इसको भी हमने अवॉइड किया है। व्हाई डू यू थिंक वी वुड हैव अवॉइडेड दिस पीयर ट्यूटर फॉर बिजनेस एनालिटिक्स कोर्स एट इंडियाना यूनिवर्सिटी ब्लूमिंगटन? यहाँ पर एक्सेल, एक्सेस, टैब्ल्यू की बात हो रही है, क्यों अवॉइड किया होगा हमने?
सर इसमें सेकेंड स्टेटमेंट तो बहुत सारे इंफॉर्मेशन है which tempt interviewer to ask many questions on such things, क्योंकि बहुत सारे things है इस पे, and yeah.
सो गाइज यहाँ पर द इंपॉर्टेंट कीवर्ड्स दैट यू हैव मेंशन्ड, शकीब, कौन से कीवर्ड्स हैं? बिजनेस एंड एनालिटिक्स, ठीक है। देन
And
अदर कीवर्ड्स, एक्सेल, एक्सेस, टैब्ल्यू, फाइन ना। यू वोंट
Tutor भी है।
वांट
managerial decisions.
मैनेजरियल डिसीजंस, ठीक है। सी मैनेजरियल एंड लीडरशिप क्वालिटीज का हमने रेफरेंस यहाँ पर ऑलरेडी दे दिया है व्हेन वी अबाउट वर्किंग विथ, वेर इज दैट नित्या, लीडरशिप पोजीशन वाला, या
ये
तो अंडर
third
अंडर
column।
पोजीशंस। सो कैंपस लीड आप थे टेडेक्स के लिए, इंडियाना यूनिवर्सिटी, ठीक है। तो लीडरशिप क्वालिटी का आपने प्रमाण ऑलरेडी वहां पर दे दिया है। बहुत ज्यादा प्रमाणित करते बैठने की जरूरत नहीं है, क्योंकि ज्यादा प्रमाणित करने के चक्कर में यहां से नए सवाल आ जाएंगे। तो इसको हमने इसलिए अवॉइड किया है। उसके बाद एक्स्ट्रा करिकुलर एक्टिविटीज हमने बात की। दूसरा, वर्क एक्सपीरियंस विद इनर गॉडेस रिमोट। व्हाट वाज दिस इनर गॉडेस रिमोट, नित्या?
So Inner Goddess again is a non-profit organization that works on financial literacy for younger girls. It's based out of Chennai, but because this was during COVID, my work was remote.
सो गाइस अगेन, आईएफएस के साथ डायरेक्ट रेजोनेट नहीं हो रहा है ये काम, ऑल्दो इट्स वेरी रिलेवेंट। आप नॉन प्रॉफिट ऑर्गेनाइजेशन के साथ जुड़कर कम्युनिटी डेवलपमेंट के लिए काम कर रहे हो, ठीक है। इट्स अ थिंग वर्दी ऑफ बीइंग टोल्ड, बट अगेन वी आर होनिंग आवर इमोशंस, खुद को रोक रहे हैं, ठीक है। कभी कभी कुछ चीजें मेंशन नहीं करना फायदे की चीज होती है, एंड दिस इज वन अमंग दोस। सो ओवरऑल, व्हेन यू गो बैक टू the form or the DAF and you look at it, so be it your work experience or be it your co-curricular activities, I hope it appears more synchronized and it resonates more with IFS compared to other services. Now, be it IPS, be it IRS, be it IS or other services. Does it make sense, guys, when I tell this? Like Basila,
Yes.
Prakant,
Yes.
Yes sir.
right? So, guys, this was an experience. This was an example of a candidate who has above average credentials, above average work experience, above average hobbies, interests, and extra curricular activities. But what about other students? जैसे हमने शुरुआत में डिस्कस किया कि कोई बच्चा आकर बोल रहा है कि मेरे तो पिटाई ज्यादा हुई है और यही मेरा अचीवमेंट है, ठीक है। तो गाइस, इट्स अ फैक्ट कि कई कई स्टूडेंट्स के कॉन्टेक्स्ट में दिस इज अ रियलिटी ऑफ लाइफ, this is a reality of life, that not everyone is born with a silver spoon in their mouth. Not everyone gets the luxury to inculcate interests, hobbies, and have a lot of exposure, right? So let's look at the contrasting examples. ऐसे बच्चे जिनके पास कम एक्सपोजर है या कोई एक्सपोजर है ही नहीं हॉबीज का, इंटरेस्ट का, and other extracurricular activities. So Devani ma'am, I would like you to jump in on this. So, what should a student who has deficit of hobbies, interests, and other extracurricular activities, and उस बच्चे को भी अपना डैफ, अपना फॉर्म कोहेरेंट बनाना है, जिस तरीके से ये वाला फॉर्म नित्या का हमने कोहेरेंट बनाने की कोशिश की है, what should be done, or what can these students do?
Right. So the thing is that there is no need to panic at this point because you do have 1 year to develop your hobbies, right? So whatever hobbies you're going to write, you will have time, and you can keep in mind certain qualities, certain officer-like qualities that you should be having that the UPSC would consider valuable in a candidate, and accordingly you can pick and choose your hobbies. So these are some qualities that we've come up with.
अब इसको देख के इंटिमिडेट नहीं होना है कि इतने सारी चीजें हमको इनकलकेट करनी है कि दीज आर वेरी मच इंटरलिंक्ड। अब अगला सेक्शन जब हम डिस्कस करेंगे, ठीक है, इनकलकेटिंग रिलेवेंट हॉबीज इन अकॉर्डेंस टू योर सर्विस प्रेफरेंस। अभी हमने देखा नित्या के कॉन्टेक्स्ट में, क्योंकि उसका सर्विस प्रेफरेंस आईएफएस है, उसका बैकग्राउंड इस तरीके से रहा है दैट शी हैज that added advantage of keeping IFS as her first preference, and that brings out integrity in her choice। ठीक है, अगर अगर नित्या का सर्विस प्रेफरेंस आईपीएस होता या आईएएस होता तो इंटीग्रिटी पर सवाल खड़ा हो जाता, एंड दैट्स अ नेचुरल क्वेश्चन दैट वुड हैव कम इन द बोर्ड्स माइंड। मूविंग अहेड, और सर्विस स्पेसिफिक हॉबीज कौन से हो सकते हैं ये समझने की कोशिश करते हैं। नाउ गाइस, दिस इज अगेन एन इंडिकेटिव लिस्ट। जरूरी नहीं कि जो हॉबीज यहां पर बोली जा रही हैं आईएएस के हेड के अंडर, आईपीएस के हेड के अंडर, यही हॉबीज आप इनकलकेट कर सकते हो अगर आपको सर्विस में जाना है। बट दिस इज एन इंडिकेटिव लिस्ट, अ सजेस्टिव लिस्ट। इसमें आप ट्वीक्स एंड टर्न्स कर डेफिनेटली हमेशा कर सकते हो। यस देवयानी।
First one with IELTS would be reading non-fiction. So policy, history, economics, right? You could be reading these kind of books, and it demonstrates that that you have intellectual curiosity, that you're willing to learn new things, and that you have and that there is a skill of critical reasoning that has been developed, because that is what non-fiction does, right? And of course, it shows a commitment to your continuous learning.
Okay, so here you have specifically mentioned non-fiction.
Right.
And that has an underlying reason, क्योंकि आपको जमीन से जुड़ के काम करना है,
Exactly.
आसमानों में उड़ना नहीं है। ठीक है।
Right. That was the reason. Because then the next one is volunteering. So this would be, it reflects that you have empathy. It reflects that you are somebody who has compassion for other people, that you are willing to engage with the community, that you're willing to work at a ground level again, right? Particularly relevant for IAS officers. You have a problem solving kind of a mindset, because when you go for volunteering, many a times, especially if it is more of a structured kind of a volunteering role that you've taken up, there is a certain constraint of resources as well. So it gives you an attitude where you can solve problems with limited resources, and you don't have to really, ऐसा नहीं है कि बहुत ज्यादा कुछ high level का हमें volunteering करना. Even something as simple as, going for blood donation or participating in some kind of an awareness drive, or even if you're able to teach a child from a more of a disadvantaged background for even half an hour a week, that is something that shows that you have public spirit, that you have social spirit and community spirit. So again, this is something that you could do. And if you want to engage in volunteering, it's not at all necessary that you have to volunteer at one organization for an entire month. It's something that you can do. You can be creative with it as per your interests. The next one is gardening. See, gardening is actually seems a little out of context here.
It's a little
But
counterintuitive। देखने
yeah,
में लगता है कि
exactly.
सर्विस प्रेफरेंस अगर इंडियन फॉरेस्ट सर्विस हो तो गार्डनिंग थोड़ा सा सेंस बनाता है, लेकिन यहाँ पर डाला है, सो देयर मस्ट बी अ रीजन।
Right, because gardening is something that shows that you are concerned about the environment. That shows that because environmental issues are a big thing now. So it shows that you are somebody who's connected with nature. And gardening is something that is actually very good for developing your for stress management and things like that. It is very good for emotional stability. So gardening is something that develops patience within you. It is responsibility, right? You are taking care of the plant. So it's constant responsibility. You're responsible for certain living things. So that shows that you are somebody who's connected with nature and willing to take responsibility for it at whatever level you are taking it. And again, that does not mean that you have to grow some very difficult plants to grow. There are plants that are relatively easy to grow. You can even go to a YouTube tutorial and figure out, okay, this is some easy herb that I could grow, something very simple, doesn't take a lot of time, doesn't take a lot of care, not necessarily a high maintenance kind of a hobby, which is what we sometimes associate with gardening, right? The next one would be documentaries, audiobooks. Again, this is to do with you being aware of what is going on around. And the documentaries and audiobooks, of course, should be, if you are aiming for IES, then it can be relatively aligned to the service. So, for example, when it comes to something like political challenges in the country, or historical kind of documentaries, so that would be quite relevant. Then there is journaling.
No,
Again, journaling is something that
when
is
we speak about documentaries or audiobooks in consonance with IAS, then as you mentioned, political documentaries that talk about social realities, case
right.
studies, I think that would be more relevant.
Yeah, that would be very relevant.
Fine.
Then there is journaling, which is again to do with you maintaining some kind of an emotional intelligence, some kind of an emotional balance, which again very important for the service. It reflects that you have a certain level of introspection that you can do, that you are self-aware, that you are somebody who's able to manage your emotions, you're able to manage yourself in challenging contexts. And it is also journaling is something that is associated with being able to complex situations because it allows you to introspect and reflect. So it is almost like holding a mirror to your thought processes. So again, very important in any kind of high stress job, actually. The next one would be creative writing. So creative writing here could be anything: stories, essays, poems, whatever it is that you enjoy writing. And it demonstrates, again, like I said, communication skills underlie all the services. It is not specific to any particular service. So the ability to convey ideas, which is obviously going to be critical for public communication. So that is something that you can inculcate. And again, like I said, it's not as if that you have to write extremely complex poetry to begin with, right? You can start with simple stories, simple essays, um, and it's not necessary that you have to devote hours to it. Again, something that you can do maybe when you're a little bit tired, something like that, right? Because it's creative writing after all. It's going to give you a certain level of outlet for your creativity. So it's going to be fun also if you make it that way. The next one would be solving puzzles. So again, this is about logical reasoning and problem solving skills. So I'm sure you all will be able to relate that solving puzzles is something that actually sharpens your cognitive abilities. So of course, very relevant here.
And an IS officer needs to solve puzzles in real lives, metaphorical puzzles, and
Yes.
which are very complicated by
Right.
their nature. Here, before we move ahead, I think Nitya wanted to add something. Yes, Nitya.
Uh, I mean, sir, what we were discussing before, I think when we were showing that you also have to pick up certain things which you want to show in the DAF to maintain coherence, I think one very pertinent point also is that in all the four sections, if we can go back to the slide once, the part of the application, that this one, yeah, where they're asking you to fill out the prizes, sports, positions of leadership, extracurricular activities. Please keep it in mind that it has a 250 character limit, which is approximately 40 words each only. So when we were talking amongst ourselves as a team, we also thought that this in itself is an indication from the commission that they're looking and expecting from the candidates to be very selective in the things that they're putting. मतलब ये ऐसी वाली situation नहीं है कि बस भर दो. Be very selective in what you're writing and picking, and be very concise in also communicating that.
Sure. Yes. So we are done with hobbies that would be more aligned with IAS. Moving ahead, Devyani, hobbies which would be more aligned with IFS as a service preference.
Right. So, as you all know, IFS requires a certain level of cultural sensitivity and global awareness, and of course, effective communication skills. So, learning a foreign language. Now, this is something that works with communication skills, and it also shows that you are open to learning about new cultures, about new contexts, right? It also shows that you are adaptable, that you're eager to engage with diverse cultures, and diversity is the key word these days in a lot of corporates as well. It's not as if this is limited to civil services, right? So learning foreign languages reflects that you have a certain level of interest in the world around you. And again, this is something that you can do. It's not necessary for you to, devote a lot of time. You can even engage in simple foreign languages. You can use Google. You can use online tutorials if you want to. Then there is traveling and exploring different cultures. Again, this has to do with cultural sensitivity and cultural adaptability. So somebody who is not open to traveling would obviously not be a very good fit for IFS, right? So it shows that you are somebody who's adventurous, who's willing to try out new things, and somebody who's comfortable with change. The other one would be debating and public speaking again. Communication skills isse reflect hote hain. That is the whole point. That you are somebody who's comfortable speaking to the public. You're somebody who is comfortable, being in the spotlight. So that is the entire point here. You're somebody who can do negotiations. You're somebody who can do conflict resolution.
Negotiation.
So these are the skills that are reflected here, right? Then there is sketching, doodling, dance, music. These are basically creative hobbies. And the logic of these is more to do with, again, cultural appreciation. If you're somebody who is, say, learning some kind of a classical dance or a classical music, then that will come in handy when it comes to, cultural appreciation. It means that you have a certain sense of culture, a certain sense of art that is very useful when you are dealing with diplomats from different countries. Then there is documentaries, podcasts. Again, now these have to be specific to IFS. So documentaries and podcasts was there in IES as well, right? But over there, you're dealing more with the social challenges, the political challenges. Here, it would be more of global challenges. So the source remains the same, but you have to adjust it a little bit as per your preference.
Global challenges and India's India's international relations with its neighboring countries, with global powers and so on.
Right, and even awareness of international cultures, right? So that could also be useful. Different political systems that are in different countries. So anything to do with that. Also, something to do with a little bit of world history if you're interested in documentaries like that, because world history, after all, shapes international relations in the present. So that is also there. Then there is creative writing. Again, like I said, when we were discussing the officer-like qualities, writing is something that underlies all the services anyways. So, when you're making diplomatic briefs, when you are when you are drafting public communication, of course, creative writing is something that will come in handy. And like I said, doesn't necessarily have to take up a lot of time. We get a little bit intimidated when it comes to creative writing, but really it's something that you can start on a smaller level, and not really, it's not like you have to write complicated poetry, right? The next one is calligraphy. Calligraphy is something that actually reflects, again, it's like gardening. It reflects patience and attention to detail. A person who is into calligraphy. So that is the logic of it. That, you are somebody who is detail oriented and gives attention to details, which is something very important when it comes to the foreign services.
Diplomacy, negotiations, foreign affairs in
Right.
general.
Right.
Fine. So the next one is hobbies or interests aligned with IPS.
Right. So this one would be more of, any kind of sports that you are interested in, whether it's athletics, whether it's team sports, whether it is some kind of, martial arts or whatever. It reflects that you have a certain level of physical fitness, that you have a certain level of stamina that is required to undertake this kind of a job. Also, sports, as we all know, I think it's about team spirit, right? You're a team player if you play team sports, and you are somebody who is disciplined, who has a certain level of, I think, competitive spirit that is also reflected in sports. So those are the things that can be very much aligned with IPS. And then trekking and adventure sports. Adventure sports I mentioned separately actually, because that is also about spontaneity. So sports and adventure sports kind of are a little bit different, because in adventure sports there is more of courage required, and there is more of a risk-taking ability, more of an endurance kind of a thing that is required here. So that is what is reflected, a certain level of spontaneity to be able to handle yourself in challenging situations, right? Being a little bit of an adventurous kind of a person. So that is something that aligns well with the IPS profile. And the next one would be meditation or mindfulness, because this is important for all services, because it is about emotional balance and about being able to manage your stress levels. But it becomes particularly more important with IPS, because it is a highly stressful job. You are kind of dealing with uh, policing and crime. So meditation, mindfulness, those are the things that keep you a little bit grounded in the context of the service. Then there is journaling. Again, the logic is the same, that this is about introspection and this is about your emotional regulation, because you are going to be in some challenging situations, which are not just it's not about just emotion but also physically challenging situations. So journaling is something that builds your resilience, that builds your fortitude. um, and then, of course, volunteering is something that will be tweaked for this. So instead of something like when we discussed about IES, then I spoke more about blood donation drives or something like that. Here, volunteering would be more about kind of community policing or something like that if you're involved in. So that sort of a thing. So you have to tweak it as per the service, even if the hobby looks the same. Then again, solving puzzles. That again is about reasoning abilities and problem solving abilities. So your morning crossword, if you do that on a daily basis, I'm sure it's an interest that you will be able to cultivate slowly over time.
Okay, a student was asking in the chat box, can we put cooking as a hobby? Definitely, guys, you can put cooking as a hobby, but you'll have to be truthful. You'll have to be genuine about it. So, for example, a friend of mine had put cooking as his hobby, and the interviewing panel asked him the recipe for kache ghost ki biryani, and he very beautifully explained the entire process and recipe for kache ghost ki biryani, and the board seemed pleased with his answer, and he got into IPS that year. So yes, cooking आप डाल सकते हो, बहुत सी चीजें हैं आप डाल सकते हो, but you have to be truthful और genuine. और ये पूरा सेशन इसी चीज के बारे में, guys. Being truthful and genuine with whatever hobby either you had earlier or you are going to inculcate from now on. ठीक है, बनावटी कुछ भी नहीं हो सकता, झूठ कुछ भी नहीं हो सकता. So guys, so far we have understood two contrasting examples. एक ऐसा स्टूडेंट जिसके पास सरप्लस हॉबीज, को करिकुलर एक्टिविटीज, इंटरेस्ट्स, वर्क एक्सपीरियंस है बोर्ड के सामने रखने के लिए, कंपेयर्ड टू अदर स्टूडेंट हु हैज डेफिसिट, बहुत ज्यादा वर्क एक्सपीरियंस नहीं है, इंटरेस्ट नहीं है, हॉबीज नहीं है, अचीवमेंट्स नहीं है. सो व्हाट दैट स्टूडेंट शुड बी डूइंग? क्या ब्लैंक रख देना चाहिए हॉबीज, इंटरेस्ट, को करिकुलर एक्टिविटीज वाला पोर्शन? बिल्कुल नहीं. तो फिर क्या करना है? दिस इज व्हाट वी हैव टू डू. और जैसे देवेनी मैम ने पहले बताया कि यू हैव 1 year एट योर डिस्पोजल टू एक्सप्लोर न्यू इंटरेस्ट, न्यू हॉबीज, इनकलकेट देम, प्रैक्टिस देम. ठीक है, ऐसे हॉबीज जो आसानी से फ्री ऑफ कॉस्ट किए जा सकते हैं, दैट वुड नॉट इम्पोज strain on you, rather that will take away your strain, right, and help you improve as a person, as a civil services aspirant, and ultimately enhance your efficiency not only at studies but in life in general. Just sir, I would like you to jump in and speak more on the services preference aspect. अब जनरल एस्पेक्ट्स तो बच्चों को पता होती ही है, और स्पेशली जो कॉमनली नोन सर्विसेज है, आईएएस, आईपीएस, आईएफएस एंड ऑल. लेकिन डिटेल में जो भी 23 सर्विसेज है उनके बारे में वेरी ब्रीफली आप बताइए, क्या कंसिडरेशंस होनी चाहिए इन सर्विसेज के प्रेफरेंसिंग में, और उसके अलावा इन सर्विसेज में क्या स्कोप, चैलेंजेस और अदर कंसिडरेशंस होते हैं, so that the students will be in a position to take informed decision while marking their preferences. Yes, Ajit sir.